everyone to the ARCA Racing podcast. Back on a Wednesday. Hard to believe this used to be the day that I used to do the podcast. So we would have done the show yesterday, but the entry list for Nashville wasn't out yet. So here we are on a Wednesday. Welcome everyone to the show. I'm your host, Colby Evans, aka Starting Park Car, of course. And we have a fun show for you guys today. We're going to talk about the wild action of Talladega. Much better race than last year, even though the finish, unfortunately, was kind of a downturn. And we are going to talk about the ARCA East Series. They are having their third race of the season. Is their final, one of their second to last standalone, I guess I should say, of the season at Nashville. So we'll be talking about that today. And yeah, CLEETUS McFarland obviously made his return back. We put him in the thumbnail, so we're going to talk about CLEETUS and his amazing top 10 finish on 7 cylinders. And a lot of other great stuff. So I'm going to go through my little intro. I go through the beginning of every single podcast, and we will jump right into the Talladega action. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Park Car on Twitter for all news and notes and all the other occasional crap you guys seem to enjoy on there. We're getting close to 7,000 followers. So again, if you like what you see here, go give me a follow there. If you like what you see here on the channel, like and subscribe to the channel. We are just over 50. I think we are 52 subscribers away. We are 52 subscribers away from 2,500 subs. So if you like what you see here, please hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel. I'd like to get to 2,500 subscribers really before the big part of summer. So, and of course, check out the Racing Experts for all NASCAR media-related content, the official media partner of this podcast, and super chats are open if you'd like to support the show financially. Every single cent that would come from it would go straight into my racing career, so if I kind of need it, so if you guys could help, that would be much appreciated. But again, it's always an option. No one's forced to. So, let's get right into it, shall we? Talladega Super Speedway, again, I always say like usual, if you see me looking over to the side, I got my notes set up. So if you see me darting to the side of the camera, I'm just reading off my notes. But Talladega was here. And, you know, one of the biggest things coming into the race this year was it going to be any good? Obviously, last year's race at Talladega, point blank, it sucked. Everybody knew it sucked. Pretty much nobody had anything positive to say about it. You know, Jake Finch led every single lap. No real cautions at all. I think the only caution they had was for the halfway break. And it's just nobody appeared to make a move. Nothing really happened last year. Overall, it was not a good race. It really was not, for the amount of hype that it actually had for it. And so, you know, I admit this year, I had no expectations. I had zero expectations coming into this race. And I felt like you couldn't get any worse than last year. We really couldn't. It would have taken a lot to be worse than last year's race. And I'm happy to say it was not worse than last year's race. And this was actually one of the better overall Talladega ARCA races with this style of car. Again, we're only going back to 2018 when we debuted this type of car on plate tracks. Now, obviously, it will never be better than the Gen 4 ARCA cars. That will always be top tier. But in terms of when we debuted this Gen 6 composite body style and plate tracks in 2018, I would rank this up in Talladega, just Talladega, not counting Daytona, but this was probably the best overall, Talladega ARCA race. The finish aside, again, we'll talk about that later. But I would say overall, this was the best Talladega ARCA race in terms of on-track action, in terms of jockeying for position, and stuff happening throughout the field. So I would definitely say that this was, and I think we can all agree, you know, 2018 did have the thrilling finish between Joe Grab Jr. and Zane Smith. Yes. But that is really all that is remembered about that race. That race itself was honestly wasn't overall a great race. It just had that really, really good finish. The 2019 race, again, not very good to watch. Nobody made a move. 2020 was just sad to watch with only 21 cars. 2021 was okay. A decent finish with Corey Heim and Dave Mader nearly winning. 2022 was okay. 2023 was okay. We started to get a little bit better. And then we had last year's stinker. But this year was really good. And I think It did help by the field size. The original entry list, this Talladega race was set to have the biggest field of cars since 2013 or 12, actually. 38 cars were on the initial entry list. Now, they would start 40, so everybody was going to make the show. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of cars. Now, ARCA does have a pre-race practice, but it's in groups. Just to give some shakedown laps, there is no qualifying. The field was set by 2024 owner points, so that immediately meant, that William Sawalich was going to be on the pole, and that a lot of the faster cars were going to start up front in general. But it also, like I said, they were going to have just some practice runs, is what I was trying. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. And one of the cars, unfortunately, arguably one of the weirdest looking cars in the field, but that meant it was one of the best. Nick White, the Drew White Motorsports team. The car, you guys probably saw the infamous picture I posted online. The Brooks Dockside Seafood Chevrolet, arguably one of the weirdest cars I have ever seen in the ARCA garage. It was definitely the first ARCA car I've seen with a next-gen number placement. And yeah, the whole thing about that wrap was wild. Now, for poor Nick White, the car did get on the track, but it appeared to immediately blow up. It did not even complete a full lap on track, and the team withdrew the car. Becca Monopoly in the 86 for City Garage, they actually did make some practice laps, but unfortunately suffered a mechanical issue in practice as well that unfortunately took them out of the race as well. So while they were listed as 37th and 38th on the charts because they technically got their practice laps in, which credits them to their starting positions. We were only going to have 36 cars take the green flag. Nonetheless, still a really good amount of cars for a Talladega ARCA race in this day and age. 36 cars. I knew we were going to have a few starting parks in the field. Ben Peterson in the 0. He started and parked last year's race, so I assume he was going to start and park this race as well. And Matt Kemp, I was kind of 50-50, but when I saw a picture of the car and I didn't see a whole lot of sponsorship on it, I'm like, maybe Matt's only going to run a few laps. And sure enough, he only ran 14 laps, so it's not shocking. Fast Track has ran start and park entries before as well. And those were the only two cars that did start and park. We had 34 full race entries. Before we get into the race, though, I did want to talk about one thing, and that is the discussion that I got into after the race about the motors in ARCA series. Now, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I wanted to talk about this now. Now, what we know in the ARCA Menard series is that they allow three motors, or three types of motors. They allow the Ilmor spec, which is the primary one that you usually see. The Yates spec, which is primarily for shorter tracks and usually for short tracks. Sometimes I see them using it on a road course, but mostly for short tracks. And then legacy motors. Legacy motors being, I think, like old school carbureted motors from the past, like your D3 Fords, SB2 Chevrolets, and R5 Dodges. Those motors. And, well, the legacy motors, they are allowed at Daytona and Talladega. And there was a lot of discourse this weekend about those cars. Now, the only cars in the field that were running non-Ilmor spec engines were the 48 of Brad Smith, the 0 of Ben Peterson, and the 06 of Brayton Laster. Those three cars were running, I believe all three of them were running SB2 Chevrolet engines. Now, obviously, those cars are given a different plate than the ones that are given to the Ilmor spec engines. The Ilmor spec engines are given a .900 restrictor plate, while the legacy motors are given a .950 restrictor plate. And as you can see on the speed charts, if you guys look at the practice results, it has a great difference on the performance of those cars. I can tell you, Brayton Laster, Brad Smith, and Ben Peterson, they were flat out. They were flat out going around Talladega, and that's all the car had in it. Brad's car was pushing about 160 on the speed charts. average laps. Ben Peterson was pushing about 162. And then poor Brayton Laster was barely pushing 158. And I feel bad for these guys. And it got such a lot of hate, on social media. And I got a lot of flack for sticking up for them because, I always get flack for trying to stick up for the people in the series. But I just feel like I got a lot of unwarranted flack. It's not all their fault. And there were some people who were saying, well, they shouldn't allow the open motors. And it's like, if you say that, you're basically taking away two full-time guys who show up here every week in Brad Smith and Wayne Peterson. If you take away the open motors for Daytona and Talladega, those guys are screwed. They cannot afford an Ilmor. I mean, Ilmors are almost $90,000 for a fresh motor. And finding a decent used one, you're still going to be paying probably close to $50 for a decent used one. So, I'm trying to make that argument, and I get so much flack and crap for it on social media that, it honestly upsets me. But it's just, I feel like ARCA is not doing those guys any favors because, yes, when they catch them, it is pretty, kind of dangerous how much the closing rates are. When those ARCA cars are in a pack going 185, 190 miles per hour, well, there's Brad, he's only going 163, 164. And yeah, the closing rates are dangerous. But is that the fault of Brad Smith? Or is that the fault of the series? I'm not going to say it's all on Brad, and I'm not going to say it's all on series either. Obviously, it would be great if guys like Brad and Wayne could get Ilmors, but it's just not in their budgets. They don't want to do it, I'm sure if they could afford them, they maybe would, but it's obviously not in their budget. But it also relies on ARCA, and in a sense, to putting, what I would say in some terms of an unsafe car on track because the closing rates are not safe. Now, granted, there are, Talladega, there's plenty of places to go. There's, in terms of getting out of the way. But those closing rates of upwards of 20 to 25 miles per hour, that is not safe. And, is there any way ARCA could change that? I'm not saying you have to give the exact same restrictor plate to the open engines, obviously. And even if it did, it really wouldn't make a difference for Brad and, and Brayton. They probably would still, save the cars and ride around at the back. But maybe instead of a .950, maybe a .925. Just a little bit bigger one. I don't know. It's just, we got to do something. I feel like we got to do something in that essence because I just, for the 0 and the 06 and the 48, like I said, they're trying their best out there with what they got, but ARCA's doing them no favors. And I hate when a lot of fans think like, oh, that's all those cars have in them. I'm like, that's not true. That is not true. What you saw, the 48, the 0, and the 06, that is not all those cars have in them. Granted, like I said, they're not the best cars in the field, not by miles. But the series in general is not doing them any favors with the penalties that they are giving them running a non-Ilmor spec engine. So, I just wanted to talk about that real quick before we got into the race. I just wanted to give my opinion on that. So yeah, if you guys want to, leave your opinion on that, put it down in the comments section. So anyway, let's get back to the race itself. We did not have Jamie Little on commentary for this race, which was nice. Again, no disrespect to her as a commentator, but she just does not excel in that role. She should stick to pit reporting where she is, in my opinion, probably the best female pit reporter of all time. But yeah, the race starts, and, unshockingly, the one thing somebody pointed out about this race was, how is this race going to start? How is this race going to start? Because we had a lot of cars that, you could say were kind of, underfunded due to the 2024 owner points starting up front. Teams like, kind of like the Maples Motorsports cars. I wouldn't really say they're underfunded, but, they probably would not have qualified maybe top 15, maybe, top 20, top 25. Some of the fast track racing cars. And, sometimes those guys can struggle a little bit to get going. And it kind of showed at the beginning of the race. Some of the cars in the mid-pack did struggle to get going a little bit. We did get a a still pretty decent pack going of cars. And from really early on, the attack was the Venturini cars versus the 18. And obviously, that's not shocking. The Venturini cars, the numbers game, they, tech play that perfectly on these tracks. But, the 18 was here to race. The 76 of Cole Raz, he was here to race, man. And I'll give Bryce Hogberg credit, in the Fast Track Racing 11 car. You don't usually see the Fast Track Racing cars up front at the plate tracks. Usually they're in the lead draft, but they're not always, up front in the lead pack. And, Bryce was hanging in there, so I really will give it to Bryce. This is probably one of the best showings out of a Fast Track car I have seen at a plate track. So well done to the Fast Track Racing guys for stepping it up for sure. But yeah, this race was not going to be given to the Venturini cars by any means. Patrick Starpoli, he came down from 37th all the way into the top 5. But, even though they had the quartet, that was the word I was looking for, even though they had the quartet of cars, you had 4 other competitive cars that were going to bring it to them. And like I said, that being the 18 of William Sawalich, the 76 of Cole Raz, the 6, there was no 2 car, but they had the 6 of LeVar Scott and the 28 of Butterbean Queen. So you had 4 really, really good cars that could bring it to the Venturini quartet, and it really, really made for some great racing. They weren't just riding around single file logging laps. I mean, these guys were racing, and that was just so good to see, because it's like, they easily could have just ridden around single file, log laps, get to the race. And it's like, no. These guys this year were like, we're not going to let Venturini take control of this race. And what I like is, they put their differences aside. They put their manufacturer team orders aside, and they actually raced against the Venturini quartet. And they got ahead of them. And not only that, the racing side by side brought in other cars who had lost the lead draft back in. So, we had a lead pack of about 14, 15 cars, and sometimes even close to 20 at some points. And these guys, like I said, they were not just stuck 2 by 2 like the freaking next-gen cars. We're slicing and dicing, making moves. People are going high, going low. I mean, this is good stuff. By Talladega ARCA standards, this is really good stuff. Like, it is definitely not as bad as we've seen it. So, they were going side by side, and unfortunately, during this run, poor Cole Raz, the guy couldn't buy a break. He lost, I believe he lost a tire. Had to make a green flag pit stop. He lost 2 laps, and, it's so hard. With only 1 guaranteed caution, and really probably not going to get many cautions in general, it is so hard to make up laps at Talladega, especially when you have a lot of lap cars that can take those free passes away from you. So yeah, I felt bad for Cole Raz. He did show that even the little bit of damage he got and the flat tire, he was actually trying to get his lap back the hard way. So, but yeah, and should mention, towards the back of the field, poor Brayton Laster, pretty much on the first lap, the car died. They got back to pit road. I don't really know what the exact cause of the issue was, but he lost like 14, 15 laps in the pits, so he struggled back out there. And then Ben Peterson and Matt Kemp, they pulled off after 10 laps and 14 laps. So those were your 2 starting parks out of the way, and then 34 cars, like I said, ran the distance. Our first crash happened on lap 25, coming out of the tri-oval. You had Spencer Gallagher making his return to the ARCA Menard Series, and Butterbean Queen and NDJ all spin out. They all got together in the tri-oval. Nobody hit the wall, thankfully. No serious damage to any of the 3 cars. They all got back going again. However, for Butterbean, it kind of ended his race. He unfortunately I think he got trapped a lap down, either on a penalty or getting back to the pits. Not quite sure of the 2. But unfortunately, he was caught a lap down, and that kind of put an end to his day. He was kind of in the lead draft, but he didn't really obviously run for the win anymore, which sucked because he definitely, like Daytona, he had a winning car. He definitely could have won that race. And obviously, the big talking point of the race was CLEETUS McFarland. We'll now talk about him. So obviously, Garrett Mitchell, obviously his name, but he was able to be used as CLEETUS for the race, which again, love. He started 24th. Despite the 24 starting position, he actually made his way up into the lead draft pretty quickly. Unfortunately, the reliability of his engine went sour literally about 5 or 6 laps in. If you watch CLEETUS's video, which I strongly recommend all of you go watch CLEETUS's video, you can literally hear it on his onboard. The engine does not sound right. And they said and there was like a broken valve. I think they said he was literally running on like 7 cylinders. It's a miracle the engine lasted the entire race. Really a true miracle that the engine lasted the whole race. But yeah, he was up there in the top 20, top 15, I think. And unfortunately, the engine started going bad, and he just started losing spot after spot after spot after spot. When the cars were double file, he could keep up. But when they would go single file, he couldn't. Thankfully, they were side by side most of the race, so he was actually able to keep up, especially when there was a car behind him. But if there was nobody behind him and they were running single file, there was no way he was going to be able to keep up. But yeah, CLEETUS was doing a great job. I was really happy for him, Garrett Mitchell, because the poor guy only got like 18 laps in at Daytona, and most of that was under yellow. So really didn't even get a chance at Daytona. So I was really happy that not only did he have a good day, he actually finished. Again, we'll get to his top 10 later, but just glad he was able to run all the laps, because I really felt bad for CLEETUS at Daytona when he barely got any on-track time in the race. So we ran 7 more laps to the break, and, keep in mind, we're not just logging laps at the front here. We trading positions from William Sawalas to Lawless Allen to Jake Finch, back to William, back to Lawless. I mean, the 18 was here to fight. It might be only one car, but the 18 was here to fight against the Venturini Quartet. So we got to the break. Now, it should be noted, during that caution on lap 26, Jake Finch was actually penalized. One of the rules in the ARCA Menard series is you don't have to pit. You can pit before the race break. You are allowed to pit before the race break, but you cannot add fuel at the same time you are doing tires. You're allowed to do tires first and then add fuel, but you cannot do it at the exact same time. The 25 broke that rule, and they were penalized 1 lap. Now, it really wasn't a whole big of a deal because they got it back 7 laps later at the caution break, the official break of the race. And, I'm like, man, we're halfway through this race. So far, this has been miles better than last year's event. So I'm like, okay, if we can just get a good second half in here and, get a solid finish, this will be a great start to the Talladega weekend. So we get back going green on lap 43. Obviously, the leader still William Sawalich. Again, he gets a great jump. Sorry, I was trying to get my notes right here, Obviously, we had the Maples cars. They took the lead. They were leading at one point, which was actually quite funny. I forgot to mention that, too. Shout out to the Michael Maples team who had the balls to stay out at Talladega. Ryan Roulette actually led a few laps, so I forgot to mention that. I definitely want to give a shout out to my buddy Ryan Roulette and Michael Maples, because staying out at Talladega in the lead draft, or out front in the lead, it does take some balls. You might not think it does, but trust me, it does. But yeah, we got back going green again, and again, just good jockeying for position. Like, I cannot stress it enough. They were actually racing. I'm just like, man, where was this last year, Where was this? Like, a lot of these guys I get were not in this race last year, but it's just so nice to see these guys racing, and they're not just riding around and logging laps and waiting for the final 4 laps to finally do stuff. These guys are racing. It's good. It's entertaining, and it's just, I mean, guys, I've been watching these ARCA races at Talladega now for over a decade, all right? We know what's good and we know what's bad. Last year was so frustrating on so many proportions. I cannot stress how much more fun this was. Poor Spencer Gallagher. I mean, this guy, he makes his return to NASCAR, or ARCA, I should say. He'll be back in NASCAR eventually. But he makes his return to the ARCA Menard Series last week at Rockingham, blows a tire in practice, hits the wall really hard, has to go to a backup car. So what happens this week? And he gets caught up in a wreck, spins around at Talladega, and then blows a tire again, another right front tire failure. And it's like, well, welcome back to NASCAR, Spencer Gallagher, with a lot of crashes. I needed that. But yeah, so, and thankfully the 23 somehow, despite that, was still going. Got back going green again. Amber Balkin got the free pass on that caution. And going back green again. Now, one of the things I did want to also discuss, unfortunately, Tim Richmond did lose power on this restart. I feel bad for Tim Richmond. It's like a cliche at this point where the 27 of Tim Richmond will run so good, top 10 level speeds, and then something breaks, and it's not even Tim's fault. So I felt bad for Tim because, once again, poor guy can't buy a break. And poor CLEETUS, you can see on the restarts, CLEETUS's car just will not go. Like I said, he's on 7 cylinders, so, he's trying to accelerate as quick as he can, and the car is just not going. So I felt bad for CLEETUS there, too. We had a 3-wide move. Again, the Venturini quartet, even though they were not always in a quartet, it always felt like the 55 was the 20's pusher. You could make the assumption that the 55 was there to help the 20 the whole race because Isabella really did not get off Lawless's bumper the entire race. So if you were going to beat the 20, you had to beat the 55 also. And I'll give credit, though, like I said, to Andy Jankowiak, Jason Kitzmiller, Thad Moffitt. They were bringing it to them, man. They were not going to let the Venturini cars win this without a fight. It's so hard when there's 4 of them, and they're the 4 arguably fastest cars in the field. And a couple laps later, we had probably one of the scariest moments of the race. Cody Dennison, driving the number 9 for Fast Track, blew a tire. Coming off a turn 2 in a very, very violent hit. I'm glad to see Cody get out of the car. You saw from CLEETUS's onboard camera, that tire just went. And Cody easily hit the wall at over 160 miles per hour. And, I do want to say this. Whether you agree with the man's political opinions or not, we know Cody has said some stuff in the past. And, whether you agree with his political opinions or not, anybody who wishes hurt upon a driver and anybody who celebrated Cody hitting the wall like that and potentially getting hurt, really shame on you. I admit, for example here, I'm not a Denny Hamlin fan. I will never be a Denny Hamlin fan, but I never want to see the man get hurt. Same with Kyle Busch. I was never a big Kyle Busch fan, but when he got hurt at Daytona many years ago, I was sad. I was really sad. So anybody who was happy to see Cody crash like that and, potentially, because he was a little shaken up. I did talk to him. He was a little shaken up after the crash. He was fine. But anybody who was cheering for him to get injured or, the fact that he, really shame on you. You're the worst kind of race fan. Seriously. And if you get offended by that, well, then that's your own problem. Nobody should ever be cheering for a driver to crash. Okay? So I just wanted to touch base on that because I saw a lot of discourse about people cheering Cody crashing and potentially getting hurt, right? Like, are you really that? Like, I don't know. We can go into a whole bubble about that. We can go into a whole freaking bubble about that. But I hate those kinds of race fans. And like I said, if you get offended by that, that's your own problem. But anyway, that set us up for a 10-lap run to the finish. And I hated that for Fast Track Racing too because that was a good car of theirs. But anyway, we got back going green again. And I tell you, this last 10-lap run, this was good stuff. This was really good stuff. I did not like the 55 pulling over and letting Lawless Allen get in front like that. Again, just blatant Venturini team orders. We've seen that 1,000 times. Nothing new. But, it still didn't deteriorate the race. Andy Jankowiak and Thad Moffitt and LeVar Scott, they were bringing it on the outside. And, man, when I say this was getting good, this was getting good. Andy J was going for the lead on Lawless Alan. They had the run on the outside. The outside lane had more momentum than the inside lane. And unfortunately, on the backstretch, it looked like the 99 of Michael Maples got hooked by someone. On the backstretch, which sucks for Michael Maples. They had just repaired that car from Daytona not too long ago. So that car was unfortunately crashed, and I'm like, oh, I wish we wouldn't have gotten a caution, because man, that was getting so good. And unfortunately, with the cleanup, it set up ARCA's 1-lap overtime finish rule, and man, I don't like the 1-lap overtime rule at all, and I don't like the fact that it's only one. But after the disaster of Daytona in 2015 or 2018, I should say, where we crashed about 80% of the field in just 1-lap overtime attempts, this is what the teams wanted. This is what the teams requested, that we have just one attempt at an overtime and one attempt at a 1-lap run. So they racked them up. Lawless Alan on the inside, Thad Moffitt on the outside. And I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? We still got 2 miles. Anything can happen. And unfortunately, we only got about 2,000 feet, because the 62 broke a transmission on the start of the race, Steve Lewis Jr., and calamity ensued behind them. Multiple cars crashed. They threw the caution, and Lawless Alan was out front at the time of yellow. I felt bad for all the cars behind them. Obviously, they did not know that the 62 had broken a transmission. So it's not Steve's fault. Broken transmissions happen, and it's not the fault of the cars behind them. They don't know what's going on. You have 5-10 seconds to react. So just a bad case and a bad deal, and man, just a disappointing finish. But it happens. It happens. It's just such a good race, ruined by just a bad finish. But it's okay. I don't want to focus on the finish. I want to focus on the fact that what we saw at Talladega for ARCA standards was a pretty good race. So, like I said, they called it. Lawless Alan got the win. Thad Moffitt got second. Isabella Robusto was third. Andy Jankowiak was fourth. Jason Kitzmiller was fifth. LeVar Scott sixth. Jake Finch recovered to seventh. Bryce Hogberg, 2 straight top 10s at Daytona, man. How about that for the fast track racing team? In eighth, William Sawalich fell back to ninth. And yes, the man himself, CLEETUS McFarland, on 7 cylinders, got a top 10 finish at Talladega. So good for him. Good for the Mark Rett Motorsports team, or the Rett Jones Racing team, whichever name they're under still. I don't know if Jones is still a part of them. Patrick Starpoli, 11th. Caleb Costner, 12th. Hunter DeChantel, 13th. And Nolan Wilson was 14th. The other cars were involved in the crash. Lewis, Balkin, Melton, Dowsett, Caudell were all involved. Alex Clubb was 20th. Ryan Roulette, 21st. Cole Raz, like I said, he lost a couple laps, never recovered to finish 22nd. Spencer Gallagher, 23rd. Again, he was involved in a couple of crashes. Tim Goulet, 24th. Not sure what happened to Butterbean Queen towards the end of the race, but he fell back to 25th. Brad Smith, 26th. Ryan Huff, 27th. Felt bad for him. He had some issues on track, I think, with penalties and tires that relegated him to a poor finish. AJ Moyer and Dale Shear had mechanical problems late that relegated them to disappointing runs. Ed Pompa, he was on and off pit road all day with mechanical problems in 30th. Michael Maples crashed out. Cody Dennison crashed out in 32nd. Tim Richmond, mechanical failure in 33rd. Brayton Laster, again, they ended up finishing 19 laps down in 34th. And then, of course, Matt Kemp and Ben Peterson were the final cars of the field. So, like I said, overall, the race was pretty good. I enjoyed it from start to about lap 74. So, I enjoyed it from about those laps, and then from lap 74 to 77, didn't enjoy it so much. But that's okay. Like I said, it's going to happen. So it's going to happen. Not a big deal. But anyway, the point standings coming out of this race. Actually, before the point standings, we have penalty reports to come out of this race. Crew Chief Larry Balstis of the Venturini Motorsports 55 has been fined $3,500 and placed on probation for the remainder of the 2025 season. And this is the big one right here, guys. Isabella Robusto and owner Venturini have been penalized with the loss of 18 championship points, in addition to the special awards, with 2 infractions found in the ARCA rulebook section for the NACA duct vent and airflow. So, and section bulletin number 11, which references seat spring mounts. So, yes, the 55 got penalized. The 46 of Nitro Motorsports has been fined $2,500, and Thad Moffitt and Nick Tucker have been penalized 12 points for body height, body height and roof heights. Sorry, I'm trying to read this text. I should have made it a little bigger. Garrett Mitchell, yes, Cleetus McFarland, poor Cleetus cannot escape the post-race penalties. This is the second time now that Cleetus has gotten fined. And he remains on probation. I forgot, he was already on probation, so this does not help Cleetus's case. But he is on probation still for the rest of the year and has been fined another $5,000 and is required to complete driver safety training as directed by ARCA, which references driver personal safety equipment. Now, Cleetus did forget his Hans device originally, but he did go back and put it back on, so I'm not really sure what the safety issue was. And then Crew Chief Kevin Ingram of the Moyer Racing Team was fined $1,000 for the remainder of the season, and placed on probation, I should say, for a window net violation. So, obviously, those were the post-race penalties, and now this is really big. They have not updated the points, but so we will add those points totals. But coming out of Talladega right now, LeVar Scott leads the championship. Lawless Allen is in second, -3. Brendan Queen is in third, -8. Now, Andy J is not running the whole season, so I will not count him, but he's in fourth right now. Jason Kitchmiller, the next full-time car, is in fifth, -20. Cole Raz in sixth. He is also -20. Thad Moffitt, with the loss of the 12 points, will put him from instead of -32 to -44. Now, I would say if he's that far behind, with all due respect to Thad Moffitt, I'm not sure if he'd be able to close back for a championship run. And this is the real kicker for Isabella Robusto. You know, she already had a tough year starting, -41 points. Well, you add her 18 points, she is now -59. So it's sad to say, but Isabella Robusto's championship run has already come to an end. And I hate that because she really did have a chance at the championship this year. But 59 points behind, you're just, in ARCA, you're not going to make that up. We don't have stages, you know, and especially when the car counts start to dip a little bit, you know, she's not going to make that up. She just won't. So I hate that for Isabella, that she really didn't even get a chance to go after this championship. You know, a crash at Daytona, mechanical failure at Phoenix, and now this. I mean, God, and despite her getting a top 5 finish, you know, it's still wiped away by this stupid post-race penalty. The next full-time driver is Clubb down in 12th. He is -50. So, yeah, now she's behind Alice Clubb in points. And then Brayton Laster down in 18th, -66. I believe he is the last full-time driver in ARCA points, I think. Unless I'm missing someone. Leading the Owners' Championship right now for the ARCA Menards Series is the Joe Gibbs 18. Shocker. They are leading the Max Siegel 6 car by 9 points and the Billy Venturini 20 car by 12 points. The Pinnacle Racing 28 car by 17 points. And the 73, which again is not full-time, but they are in 5th, -20. So, yeah, like I said, Talladega, really good race, really bad finish. But overall, I will 100% take it compared to the crap that we got last year. So, well done to the series, well done to the drivers for putting on a fun race. I just wish we could have capped it off with a better finish. And congratulations to CLEETUS McFarland on his top 10. I cannot wait to see him back in the ARCA Menard Series at Bristol later this year. So that concludes the Talladega portion of the show. We will now transition over to Nashville. Yes, Nashville. Not Nashville Super Speedway, but the Nashville Fairgrounds, the track that is somehow still going, which I'm happy to see because the stupid people who live around Nashville trying to get the track taken down, those people can screw off. But the Nashville Fairgrounds, ARCA East standalone event, fun race, fun track, and a good car count this year. We were able to step up the car counts the last 2 years. We had 18 cars last year and 18 cars this year. Like I said, and that's always a positive because, man, 15 cars or it's 13 cars like we've had some previous years, it can be kind of hard to watch. Not gonna lie, it can be. The entry list goes as follows. I'm just going to read it from the very top and we'll go all the way down to the bottom. The number 9 of Mike Basham. Again, we'll start up with the fast track racing entries. Yes, should note we will get to him in a second, Caleb, in the chat. The number 9 of Mike Basham. The number 10 of D.L. Wilson. Number 11 of Zachary Tinkle. Number 12 of Takuma Koga. Number 18 of Max Reeves. Number 23 of Tyler Reif. Number 31 of Quinn Davis, one of the Drive for Diversity drivers out of the Rev Racing stable. She'll make her ARCA Menard Series debut, so good for her. You guys might not have heard of her. Go check her out on Facebook. Really good driver. I don't know much about her either, but go check out her Facebook. I was able to learn a lot about her. Austin Vaughn in the 34, Brad Smith in the 48, Cole Raz in the 76, Isaac Kitzmiller in the 79, Brian Finney in the number 80. Yes, you guys remember that name. Brian Finney is back after many years of not driving in the series. Becca Monopoly in the 85. Jeff McConney in the 86. Hunter Wright in the 95. Jackson McLaren in the 96. Rita Goulet in the 01. Yes, now this is kind of an interesting entry. This is a Peterson car fielded under fast track racing. Kind of weird. And then, of course, Nate Muller in the 06. So, you guys might notice one of the drivers that was slated to run for the full-time East Championship that is not here, 2 of them actually. The number 28 of the Pinnacle Racing Group and the number 56 of Timmy Hill. So, and you should also note the 93 of London McKenzie. Mainly because the 93 was absolutely demolished at Rockingham, and I'm not sure if they will be back at all. The 56 of Timmy Hill was also heavily crashed at Rockingham as well. And Timmy is no longer running for the full East Championship either. And, of course, the 00, they blew up at Rockingham, so they're getting their car repaired. So we did have a couple of cars that probably would have raced had they not crashed and blown up at Rockingham. But, it's okay. It happens. At the number 28 of Pinnacle Racing Group, like I said, kind of shocking that they did not show up to this one. I figured they would have shown up to run the rest of the East Series title hunt out for the owner's title at least. Still, nonetheless, a solid field. I think the starting parks, of the 18 cars, the starting parks will be the 01, the 48, and 50-50 on whether Nate Muller runs the whole race or not. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Home race for Peterson Motorsports. This race is not very far away their place at all. So I could see Nate going the distance. And maybe Mike Basham. And that's mainly because Mike Basham's crew chief is Mike Basham. So usually if the driver is his own crew chief, he's a starting part. So, yeah, the 9, the 48, and the 01 look like our starting parks, which would leave us with 15 cars running the distance. To put into perspective, last year's race had the same 3 starting parks, 15 cars ran the whole race. So the same as last year. Obviously, last year was a domination run by William Sawalich. Isabella Robusto got an impressive second-place finish. Connor Zilic was third. Like I said, hopefully the race can be a little bit better than last year. The Nashville ARCA East races have kind of kind of always been kind of bad. They really have not been that overall that good. We saw how strong the 18 was, and frankly, I think it's just going to be another 18 dominance race. I wish I could be a little bit more peppy about it, but, maybe Tyler Reif and Cole Raz can, play some defense, but I don't know, man. The 18 just has so many notes, and they're just so far ahead of everyone else in terms of money and what they're allowed to spend, so I think it's just going to be another easy victory for Max Reeves, man. It still boggles my mind why he's not running the whole East tenure. They're still going after the Owners' Championship, obviously, but this is not a full-time East run for Max Reeves. The standings coming into this race, Isaac Kitzmiller actually currently leads the point standings right now over Cole Raz by 3. Tyler Reif is in third, 9 back. Zachary Tinkle is minus 10 back in fourth. Takuma Koga is fifth, minus 15. And Austin Vaughn is in sixth place in full-time points, minus 17. And I believe those are the only other guys running the full East tenure. So, like I said, your championship really was going to be decided between Kitzmiller, Raz, and Reif. I think that's going to be a pretty fun battle, especially when we get to the combo races. Tyler Reif's really going to have to play catch-up. He lost a lot of points at Rockingham. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys attack the racetrack this weekend in these ARCA cars. At least we do have that intriguing championship battle to watch, but I think it's personally just going to be another blowout win for the 18. Maybe we'll see, the 76 play a run or the 23, but I don't know. I just think it's going to be too hard to beat that 18 car. So I really wish the East Series would adopt the model of the West Series and just run the full 150 laps at Nashville, flag to flag. Don't run a caution at lap 75. Honestly, I really would. I think that'd be more entertaining for tire management purposes and would actually teach these young kids something instead of just running balls to the wall for, 75 laps. But, yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be a fun race. 15 full race cars, 3 starting parks potentially. But, who knows? Maybe we'll see the 18 get beat, but I'm not expecting much anything else other than that. The East Series kind of is what it is at this point. Kind of weird to think, though, that this is going to be Max Reeves' last race for a little bit. He is not. I don't believe he is running Flat Rock. I don't think he is. I know Max Reeves' schedule this season is primarily focusing on the main division races and not the East Division. Yeah, Max Reeves is only running 3 races. Okay, so he is running Flat Rock. But yeah, he's only running this race and Flat Rock, and then he's not in the 18 for the remainder of the East Series season, which, again, kind of confuses me, but, I don't know what goes on over at Gibbs. But, anyway, guys, thank you again for tuning into this episode. We're going to be at Kansas in a few weeks. We have Kansas next weekend. We will be back there with Brad Smith, so it'll be nice to be back in the garage for the first time this season. Get to see all my ARCA friends. Get to see some people that I haven't met that I'm looking forward to meeting. And, so next week's podcast I'm looking forward to talking about. But thank you all for this weekend show. Hope you guys had a great time. Again, like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for notifications so you guys never miss a podcast when I go live. And have a great rest of your Tuesday night. And I will catch you all on next week's show. Give you all a goodbye salute. I'm going to try to figure out how to turn this off. And we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.